Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. First things first, got to get a group selfie, of course. If you don't want to be in the selfie, then you might want to hide. In Europe, we have this new thing starting next week, the General Data Protection Regulations. Everybody got your newsletters up to date? So we should all do a GDPR selfie. Okay, you'll all cover your faces, and we'll do a GDPR compliant selfie. Oh, everybody, I can't see him. I think I pressed the button. I may have just been poking my own face wildly, but that's normal. Right, excellent. I would like to start with a very quick demo, if it's all right with you all. Is that okay? So I'd like somebody to help me with the demo. I am videoing this, so if you come up here, you'll be on YouTube at some later point, so bear that in mind. I'd also prefer it to be somebody who I don't already know. That rules most of you out, I think. So is there anybody who can help me with a very quick demo? It will take about five minutes or so.
What do you need to do?
Answer some questions. I'm guessing it's you since you've asked a qualifying question. And you are Julie. Julie, take a seat, Julie. Thank you very much, Julie. Nice to meet you. I'm Peter.
We got a little lift that I can. Do you want to help me up? No. I know it's going to be difficult.
If I stand here, would that you can hang on somehow and see if you can.
1, 2, 3. It's quite hard.
And we're there. Very good. Right then. Thank you very much. Thank you, Julie, for volunteering in that roundabout way that you did by asking a qualifying question, which kind of gives us a clue. So obviously the session is about getting your clients unstuck. So do any of you ever find, hands up if you would call yourselves a coach? That's most of you, fantastic. And the rest of you, what would you say, trainers or managers, therapists, counsellors? Okay, excellent. So do you ever find that you get to a point in the conversation or the process where you feel the client's stuck and you just don't know how to make any progress, or you feel like you go around in circles or something like that? So that's what this session is about. Julie, could you tell me something, anything at all, that you would like either less or more of in your life?
Do I have to tell you what it is?
Yes.
Can we not do work without content?
The clue was in the tell me part.
Okay.
So choose something that you would be happy to share, of course, as you will.
A little less stress.
A little less stress. And can you tell me where? I've never worn one of these Britney Spears type microphones before. I find it a bit strange, I'm sorry. I probably should have shaved. It's getting a bit of feedback. So, can you tell me where you are now in relation to that?
Well, there's a few things that have kind of added to my stress. So what, on a scale? Yeah, so probably about a 7.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is the important part for the workshop that we're going to do now. I don't think what you just told me is true. We'll come back to that later. So I'm going to get everybody practicing something, and we'll continue this conversation a bit later on, if that's okay with you. Would that be all right with you?
Get down.
You can. Do you need a hand?
I can do that, I think.
You can do that. Thank you very much. So I heard a bit of a when I said I don't think what you just told me is true, and I think this is the fundamental issue that we all have as coaches or whatever capacity we're working with people. That what the client tells you is it's related to the truth. There is some truth in there, but it's not in itself true. And if we start asking questions, so I asked Julie something that she would like less or more of in her life, and she said A little less stress, she said, a little less. And then I asked you, where are you in relation to that? And she said, before she said that, she said, what, like on a scale? Or what, like, well, some things, you know, things have added to it recently. And what, like on a scale of 1 to 10? And I did this. And then she said 7. So she's 7 now, and she only wants a little less. So we're like 6, 6.5, that'll be okay. So she's telling us a lot in that. But what she isn't telling us is the truth. And therefore, as the coach or the practitioner or whatever it is that you do, your natural inclination will be to start asking questions, right? I mean, as a coach, that's what you've all learned how to do, ask questions. What kind of questions came to your mind? If your client said, I want a little less stress, where are you now in relation to that? 7. What questions would come into your mind as a coach? What prevents you from? What take you to 10? When less stressed, then what happens? You've done clean language, obviously. And how pink is your stress? And so on. What would you like it to be? So, fantastic. What does less stress look like? Wonderful. And all these questions have something in common. And what those questions have in common is precisely what is stopping you from getting the client unstuck. So the first thing I would like you to do, if you'd be willing to play along, is have a go at a little practice in pairs. Will that be okay with you? Just turn to the person next to you, or if you don't like the look of the person next to you, if they look like a bit of an idiot, so maybe, then make a feeble excuse and find somebody else. I haven't told you what the exercise is yet.
Just work out.
Yeah, just talk amongst yourselves. I normally get paid for you to talk amongst yourselves, not this time. So, where are we? Oh yes. So who's familiar with GROW as a coaching model? Fantastic. So you ask the client about the goal that they have or goals that they have. You ask them reality. Where are you now? What's the current situation? And then you ask them for options. So what I would like you to do, just for 5 minutes each way, now the obvious question you are bound to ask, being all excellent time managers because you were here on time, is, but Peter, how will we know when 5 minutes is up? You will hear this sound. It's good, isn't it? So you'll hear that sound, and then you'll switch roles, you'll switch directions in your partnership. What I would like you to do is just for 5 minutes, ask, so one of you will present a goal or a problem. Either way, it's the same either way. So present something that you would like to achieve or do, or something you would like less or more of in your life, that sort of frame. And what your partner's going to do is ask you options questions, only options questions in GROW. What examples can you think of options questions? What else could you do? Could you think of any options? That would be an obvious one. Any other suggestions for options questions? What's it look like? What's it sound like? That sounds like clarifying the goal rather than an options question. What else? What would happen if sounds like a way forward question. See, this is the tricky thing with any sort of process like GROW. Your inclination is to skip forward or hang back. And what I'm asking you to do is stay in the options conversation. Generate. So who's an NLP practitioner? So you all know the 6-step reframe, right? So it's the same as the step in the 6-step reframe where you get the creative part to generate alternatives. You can think of it from that perspective as well. So do that. So get a statement of what it is your client's presenting you with. Ask them only options questions. Don't be tempted to come back into clarifying the goal. Don't be tempted to move forward into figuring out the way forward. Just coming up with options, alternatives, what else. Do that for 5 minutes. I'll sound the alarm, switch round, and so you both have a go at that. And that's going to be our point of reference. That's going to be our starting point. Everybody okay with that? Any questions? You're coaches, you're full of questions. So you carry on with that and I'll let you know when it's time. Okay. We are very carried away with yourselves. So you're coming up with lots of good options? Excellent, fantastic. And do any of you now feel more committed to your goals, that you've maybe overcome some barrier or something like that? Got some good ideas? Yeah, fantastic. So grow's great. But options is the point where people get a bit stuck and frustrated, I find. Because if I could come up with options, if I knew what to do, I wouldn't be talking to you. And so there's a certain comfort in coming up with options. Feels a little bit like daydreaming sometimes. There's a comfort in that. There's all these things I could do. There's all these ways that I could achieve my goal. Could. But the way forward, the next step is obviously about turning the could into a will, and about commitment. And even a will isn't certain, because this is all future tense. The only thing that really counts is an am. I am doing it. That's the only thing that really counts, of course. So, I said to Julie that I didn't think that what she told me is true, and some of you went, can't say that to a client, that's terrible. But why did I say that? Any thoughts? Because I'm doing a presentation? Yes? Dramatic effect? I think that was inevitable. If we just waited long enough, she was coming down.
It's not compelling.
It's not compelling. An emotional jolt. It's we could call it a pattern interrupt.
You want her to be honest, and so you have to be.
I want her to be honest, and so I have to be. Because otherwise, why would I buy into her story if I believe that there's no, or maybe there's some commitment lacking, or maybe she hasn't told me the whole story, or maybe she's toning down what she's asking for. If I buy into that, then what am I doing as coach? I become her enabler. I'm facilitating her staying where she is, that stuck state. And actually the stuck state has comfort for both of us. It has the comfort of familiarity for the client. For the coach, it has the comfort of, well, whatever you charge for a session. I mean, you know, you stay there for a few sessions, and that's all right, isn't it? It's nice work if you can get it.
She's going to show you how she's fighting to get back into that stuck problem.
Yes, as soon as she started thinking about it. Yes. Was anybody here for my presentation last year? The meta model presentation. So thank you. So if you were, you'll have seen how the instant I ask for somebody to help me with a demonstration, they start running the program. And they run that program over and over and over again. And we saw Julie run that program a number of times. She did it first of all when she asked a qualifying question. She did it again when she tried to get on the stall. She did it again when she told me about what it was she wanted. She did it again when you said, oh, so you're a comedian. She did it again and again and again. But that's not what this workshop's about. This is about the unsticker. When I'm running master practitioner training, I always forget to tell you this. There's a couple of sheets of paper up at the front. If you want to put your name and email address down, you can win a place at my upcoming master practitioner and trainer training. And that's genuine. Vincent's done my you won that.
I won that.
You won that? Good prize?
Fabulous prize.
Okay.
He didn't know I was going to be here.
No. So I would have prepared if I'd have known you were going to be here. I'd have warned the stewards if I'd have known you were going to try and get in. But if you want to put your name down, you'll win a place. And I bring that up because it's there, and I forget otherwise. But also because one of the things I keep on reminding my master practitioner students of is to keep asking yourselves the question, whatever the client says, keep asking yourself the question, why are they telling me this? It isn't because it's true, it's because what? So breaking their own thinking patterns and reality. It's something they want to change, maybe. It's part of the story. Yeah, they're gone.
It's like an avoidance.
Could be some avoidance in there. Fundamentally, whatever they tell me, they are telling me because This is going to be so obvious you'll kick yourselves. It's because that's what they want me to know. It isn't because it's true, it's because that's what they want me to know. And therefore there is truth in there, but it's wrapped up in other things. How do you get behind or between those other things? How do you get to the truth? How do you get to that fundamental representation that's in their minds of where they are in relation to where they want to be? There's a presupposition in that. I asked something you'd like less or more of. She said a little less stress. I asked, where are you in relation to that? She said a number of things, and then she said 7. The questions presuppose there's a gap. It's a setup. The questions presuppose that she isn't where she wants to be. And therefore there will be something preventing her from being there. Otherwise she would be there now. And so the whole coaching process really is a bit of a setup in that sense. You're asking questions. What's your goal? What do you want? Presupposes you don't already have it. And therefore there's something stopping you from having it. And therefore, as coaches, counsellors, therapists, whatever it is you do, we are always working in that narrow space between where the client dreams of being or aspires to being or wants to see themselves as being, and where they believe themselves to be currently. But actually we confuse ourselves by thinking that one of those is reality and the other as being the future. Neither or both of those are reality at any given time. You are already where you want to be, and not at the same time. That's the human condition. That's the human paradox that we all live with. As goal-oriented organisms, we have part of our brain that represents outside sensory data as it is now, and we have part of our brain that represents that same sensory data, but in the future as a target state. And then the motor part of the brain resolves the difference between those two. And the main way that we resolve the difference is by doing what? By doing stuff, taking action. You feel thirsty, you take a drink of water. You think, oh, I'd like to go to the NLP conference, you go online, you buy your ticket. You take actions in order to get to the things that you first think of. And so the brain is a beautifully tuned system for doing that. But what we do is we confuse the current state with reality, when the current state is a representation of reality. So on Master Practitioner training, the thing I'll keep on reminding people to do is ask themselves, why are you telling me this? What is it that you want me to know? So you all have one of these. Anybody not got one of these? Then pop your hand up and the stewards will help you out. So the pocket ones. Have you got some more left now? Just these ones.
We don't have any.
There's another box in that plastic box at the back there. There's another pack. Wonderful. So keep your hand up. The stewards will make sure you got one of these. This is a pocket unsticker, which is free. This is the book version of the unsticker. It's just got more questions. That's only a £5. They've got them in the bookshop. If you're lucky enough to have an Android smartphone, there is also, completely free, the app version of the unsticker. It's free, there's no advertising. It's just a random question generator. The reason it's important is because when Julie said that she would like a little less stress, and she said that she's a 7 in relation to that, whatever that means, I don't know. You as a coach, you're thinking of questions. You thought of questions that you might ask. What else could you do? What would a 10 look like? What could you do to get yourself there? And so on and so forth. And all of your questions presupposed certain things. If she's a 7 out of 10, then it's possible to be a 10. She wants to be a 10. There are things that she can do to be a 10, and so on. But all of your questions were based on a deeper assumption that I've already mentioned, that what she told you was true. So what I'm going to do is show you a different way of approaching this point in the coaching process that I invented by accident about 15 years ago. When I was trying to write a software tool to do something else, I invented this by accident. Julie, could I have you back for the second part of the demo, please? Thank you, Julie. In case you need a hand. And we're there. So, what your questions all had in mind, what your questions all had in common was that they were contextually relevant to what Julie had said previously. So when you're working with a client, you will ask them questions which are contextually relevant to what they just told you. Anybody disagree with that? Even if they're clean language questions, they will be relevant to what the client has told you. Julie, just give us a recap again of what it is that we're talking about, or the thing that you would like to work on.
The thing was stress.
Stress.
Kind of obviously stepping away and reflecting, and that's kind of multifaceted.
Okay. Stress that is multifaceted.
Yeah, but which the context for me is that it's been compounded. So maybe there's some stress in the background, but it's been compounded by two quite major life events in the last 3 weeks. So I think that's affected my so that's out of my control. So I want to control the things that I can control.
Okay. Could you pick a random number between 1 and 333? And tell me. 11. What would happen if you didn't?
If I didn't reduce the stress, I'd probably become unwell.
Okay. Random number, somebody shout one out? 50. 50? If this problem was a country, what kind of government would it have?
An autocratic government.
An autocratic government. The number?
37.
37, did somebody say? How does the problem look through the wrong end of a telescope? Small. Next number? 297. Does the problem go down the plug hole clockwise or anti-clockwise? Anti-clockwise. Next number? 20. How does the problem look in a mirror?
Big.
I'll just turn some random pages. What kind of fossil will this problem become? A seahorse.
I don't know why I said that. Completely random.
What would a celebrity chef make with this problem? Eat and mess. Is the problem tied up with string or ribbon?
String.
How close do you have to get to the problem before you can't see it anymore?
Very close.
Hot dog, corn dog, what would a problem dog be like? You know that. What would a problem dog be like?
Beef dog. I don't know.
Beef dog. How would an incompetent doctor diagnose the problem?
With a toy doctor's kit.
And what does the problem mean?
It means a lot.
What would you be doing now if things were different?
I'd still be here.
Was this a problem 10 years ago? What kind of animal could solve this problem?
An owl.
An owl.
Owl.
And how shiny is this problem?
Pretty dull.
Pretty dull. And what does the problem taste like?
Bitter.
Bitter. And one more. What would you do if you could?
Chuck it out.
Chuck it out the window. How do you feel now compared to about 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, pretty calm.
Pretty calm? What's changed, would you say?
Well, chucking out the window maybe, but the kind of a series of questions potentially that sort of made it less real, I suppose, possibly.
Made it less real. Okay, thank you. Did any of you notice any state changes? When did you notice the first significant state change? Go on. Which question gave the first significant state change? Or which answer? The seahorse. Yeah. So which fossil would this problem become? The seahorse. That was the first time we saw a significant state change. What has to come before we externally observe a state change? A what? Yeah, the internal representation has to change in order for something to happen that we can observe externally. So her brain had to do something, had to move muscles, have to secrete hormones, and things had to happen in order for us to observe some behaviour. And we saw a state change. There was a laugh. She leaned forward. She relaxed. The tension relaxed. And then there were some other questions where we saw some other state changes. But fundamentally, these questions are random. I mean, you're picking random numbers. I'm just turning to random pages. So the important point is the question cannot be contextually relevant to the client. And yet, what is it that happens as a result of that? Pattern interrupt?
Distorts their reality.
Distortion? Change in some modalities?
You first spoke of a problem.
New perspective. What's really interesting? Yes. Very good. Alter her reality so the question does fit. So, Julie, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to do is give you, again, 5 minutes each way. I'll sound the horn as usual. To think of a problem. It could be expressed as a goal, if you like, but something that fits that description. And what your partner's going to do is pick random questions from your pocket unsticker, and they're going to continue asking questions until what? Till they see a state change, yes. And it's very important that what you don't do is go, oh no, not that one, not that one. No, oh, that's a good one. Because as soon as you start looking for a good question, what are you doing? You're contextualizing. You're trying to predict what will work. What people often say when they do this is they say, oh, it was the last question was the best. The last question was the one that worked. What that doesn't do is give any credit to all the questions that came before that prepared the state for that last question to have some additional sort of impact or whatever. If you were to go away from today and critically analyse these questions, then yes, you would see some modality changes, reframes, perceptual positions. You'd see all the NLP practitioner techniques in the questions. And it's the randomness that's the key. So pair up, either with the same person or with somebody different if you feel like a bit of variety in life. And if you're just tired of hearing that person whinging on about their problems, then by all means switch partners. 5 minutes each way, practicing the unsticker questions, see what happens. Good. How did you get on with that? Very good. You got on very good with it. That's not grammatically correct, but it's a nice answer. How did you get on with that?
She said after the first meeting, the person speaking with him like that won't get
It won't happen again. And
I have the feeling that on the one hand it de-dramatizes the problem, and on the other hand, some of the questions, like they it's like a red light, right? That they trigger some. Okay, I must think about this, or I haven't thought about this. And
so on one
it's
hand,
like
it relaxes the problem. How did you describe it? It de-dramatizes the problem. And on the other hand, some of the questions could actually trigger, you said a red light could actually trigger thoughts or reactions or something. And again, at master practitioner training. So you all learned anchoring at practitioner, I take it. Why did you learn anchoring? To change people's state. And what I would propose to you as master practitioner level thinking is that changing state is a trivial use of anchoring. Much more interesting use for anchoring is triggering programs to run. And therefore, some of these questions, because they're structured, the questions contain within them the structure of various NLP principles and techniques. Some of them will de-dramatize or reframe the issue. Some will trigger something, will trigger programs to run. And a combination of the both will have some kind of effect. Anything else? Any other? Yes?
my problem is ongoing for quite some time. Actually, I recognise I was down to the detail, which was technical problem. So the questions actually allow me to go back up and get a picture.
So your problem, which you said had been ongoing for some time, the question got you to realise you'd been down in the detail, and the questions enabled you to get back up to the big picture and see from a different sort of angle. And great, very nice. Thank you very much.
You can also see the eye signs as well. So you come down from the kinesthetic where the problem is, and then you ask the question, you go to visual construct, and then or visual.
So you can see the effect of the questions on the. Yeah, on the thought processes. Very good. What I discovered was I was trying to write a software tool that somebody could type in a program and it would pick out certain words and then ask intelligent-ish questions, including the words from their question. And what I discovered was that this is an almost insurmountable feat of programming for me. And the people writing artificially intelligent software agents have only just started to crack it 15 years later. So I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have got very far with that. But what I discovered by accident was asking random questions was far more powerful. And exactly as you said, what's your name, sorry? Andrew. Exactly as Andrew said, in order to make sense of the question, the unsticker question, the client has to change the representation of the problem. This is a very, very important fundamental point. That the problem, what we call the problem, or even what we call the goal, is a representation of a state which is not in the here and now. And therefore, what we perceive stops us from getting to that point or making whatever change it is we want. Is how that representation, how we perceive that representation. It's not necessarily objectively true, but it's a representation. And the interesting thing about the unsticker is, I don't know if you noticed this when you were being asked the question, but the state change doesn't come when you answer. It comes when you hear the question. Anybody find that? And the reason I think that is because in order to make grammatical sense of the question, you have to first reframe the problem. So by asking questions which are deliberately outside of the context of the problem, you have to change the way you think about the problem in order to hear the question. So how many of you work in any kind of corporate or organisational context with people? I find this is a very neat way to get people to change state, change opinions, change beliefs, change perceptions, change decisions even, by asking questions that are outside the boundaries of what they're presenting as their reality or representing as their reality, they don't have to give you an answer. So you could put these questions in an email, and they don't even have to give you an answer, because it's just interpreting the question that has the effect of the reframe. Because in order for your brain to process the language, you make the problem fit the question. And then the next question is different again, and the next question is different again. Now, I said something at the beginning, first of all, in my demonstration with Julie, that what Julie had told me wasn't true. And I haven't really sort of come back and closed that loop, I suppose. So maybe I should I do that? Yeah. Okay, Julie, could I borrow you one last time, please? Well done, Julie. Thank you very much. You'd have worn your comfortable shoes if you knew this was going to happen, wouldn't you? There we go. Thank you. So, Julie, you said, I asked you something you like this or more of. You said a little less stress. I asked you, where are you in relation to that? And you said a few things, what, like on a scale or whatever, and then I shrugged and you said 7. I don't know whether 7 is how much you'd like less stress, how little more stress you want, or how much stress you're experiencing. I don't know what 7 meant. But what I do know is that this is, and the bit that you didn't tell me, is that this isn't just about you. This is something about other people, maybe putting pressure on you. Is that connected?
Yes, and two situations.
Yes, and 2 situations. And by situation, I'm guessing you mean...
Bereavement is one,
Uh-huh.
so that's out of my control. And I was attacked, so that's the second.
So bereavement and you were attacked. Okay, and we don't need to know any details about it, of course. Thank you. And so when you say situation, of course, you'll recognise the word situation as a normalisation, which is what? Yeah, that's what we learn at practitioner, isn't it? We learn that a normalisation is a stuck state. What it actually is a moment in time abstracted to be a thing, and a thing exists out of time. It's always. So a normalisation doesn't freeze a moment in time, it makes it apply always. And actually therefore prevents the person from moving on. And where you situated yourself, there's a rather clumsy meta-model intervention, but effective nonetheless. Where you situated yourself for those two events that you couldn't control. So something happened, you felt you couldn't control it, and therefore that need to control what other people are doing in your life, I guess, came more to the front and made you feel stressed, because, as I think you alluded to, you can't control what other people are doing. So there's an instance of letting go, throwing it out the window, as you said. So the reason I said I don't think that what you told me was true is because I don't think that, even if we were talking about some sort of stress scale, I don't think your stress was a 7. I think it was higher. But you don't want to appear weak or vulnerable by saying it's a 9 or a 10. That would be my guess. Would that be fair? Okay, thank you. And therefore, what I'd like to leave you with, and thank you very much for taking part in the demo with me. It's interesting how your unconscious mind answered for you before you kind of joined the party, really, didn't it? In sort of putting your hand up and saying something. What I'd like to leave you with is a suggestion that you, I suppose, if you think about the best relationships you've had in your life, you haven't been in control and haven't had that sense of being in control. And maybe that's what's been the best about them. What do you think about that?
I'm trying to process it.
There's a bit of excitement there, isn't there? There's a bit of excitement when there's a relationship where there's a bit of free will involved. So that's one of life's great mysteries. So I will say thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Final time. Well done. Well done, Julie. As I say, just wanted to close that loop and explain why I'd said that what she'd said wasn't true. And therefore, if we go back to the point I made earlier, that the client doesn't tell you what's true, they tell you what they want you to know. And therefore, by saying that her stress level was a 7, when it was actually, she would rate it higher than that if she was, if she felt like she could be open to that degree. What is she trying to tell me? By saying it's a 7 when it's really higher, what is she trying to convince me of? I'm not so weak. Yes, very good. She's trying to convince me that she's not vulnerable. Which is very interesting. And therefore, as the practitioner, I've got to deal on 2 levels. I've got to deal on the level of what is she telling me, and then on the level of what's she really telling me? Why is she telling me this? Why is that the thing that she wants me to know? You could spend years learning meta-model and learning, all this clever stuff, which you'll find in the book Coaching Excellence, which they've got in the bookshops. All of that stuff's in there. Or you could just use a tool that randomizes and takes the context out of the questions for you. Now, the Unsticker isn't the only way to do this. And the reason that the Unsticker is free online on the app is because I just want to share it, make it available for you to use. The reason the book's only a £5 is because it's about what it costs to print. It's not much more than it costs to print. So my intention is just to give you something that you can use that's a bit of fun, something a bit different that you can use with private clients, corporate clients. But the important thing is training yourself to not to reject what the client says, but to kind of look beyond it. And I find a really useful way to shortcut those years of training or practice is to use a tool or something or some framework that you've got that randomizes the questions for you so that you can't ask questions that are constrained by the context. One of the things I used to do when I was first starting to learn NLP is I'd go into a coaching session with people at work and I would have already decided what questions I was going to ask, as a way of stopping myself getting drawn into the content. Because I'm sure those of you who've done practitioner, even so more so master practitioner, will have had the experience of getting drawn into the client's content. And the problem is, if you get into rapport, when they're stuck, you're also stuck. So the two of you are sitting there thinking, oh my God, I don't know what to do next. So if you've got something you can go to, whether it's in your notebook, just inside the front page of your notebook, just write down a bunch of questions. That if I get stuck, these are the questions I'm going to ask. And they don't have to be about the context of the conversation. It's better if they're not. Or you can use the pocket unsticker, and I know that there are people who say, oh, I went to this workshop and this guy gave me this problem-solving thing, and I thought, it's fun, shall we give it a try? And the client will say, yeah, okay, whatever, we'll give it a go. And just give yourself an excuse or a reason to try something a bit different. Sometimes I'll confess, when I'm doing, I work on delivering some talent programs for high potentials, and I have 29 coaching sessions a month over the phone with a bunch of people in Latin America. I can't put my hand on my heart and say I fully pay attention for all of those 29 hours. And sometimes if there's a pause in the conversation, I'm thinking, oh God, they just told me something, I wasn't listening to what it was. I will ask a general purpose question like, well, what do you think about that? And they'll say, well, what? About what my boss said? Yeah. Because you've got to be confident. If you're going to do that, you've got to, yeah, just go with it, yes. And then, well, actually, yeah, I never thought of it like that. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. I didn't think of it like that before. I don't know what I just asked them. But it shows, again, the power of presenting a structure that, it may be a strong word, but I'll use it anyway, that forces the client to do their own reframing. Because reframing, therefore, isn't something that we do to them. It isn't a technique that we do to them. But it's something that they do in order to make sense of the difference between what they're perceiving and what they expect. To make sense of their lives. To make sense of events in their lives that seem odd or out of context, or just when life isn't going quite the way you'd like it to. So we've got 25 minutes, so I'm thinking I'm going to give you a bit more of a chance to practice with the unsticker again. And this time, do genuinely switch partners with somebody else, because it's very easy to think, oh, I've just worked with this one person, so I've built rapport, and that's why it worked. So do something with a complete stranger now, if you can. So I'll give you 5 minutes again each way to have another practice with the unsticker, and then we can have a bit of a Q&A if anybody's got any questions. Off you go. Thank you. The second time you just practiced it, did it seem any different once you knew a little bit more about the theory behind it? Felt different. When you were asking or being asked? Both. Good. Very nice. So I just, yes. I use the app. Excellent.
Yes, much easier.
With the app, yeah, because you don't have to look for a question, and that's got 200 questions in the app. It's just an Android, but if you are lucky enough to have an iPhone, then there's an online version, and there's an online. If you click on if you go to the unsticker page, you'll see there's a link to the online version. That will take you to a page that only has that little Q&A box in it. And so that will look like, if you're online with your iPhone, it will look exactly like the app. So you can use the online version. So I promised you a little Q&A, but I had a very interesting question from Lisa, which is, where do you go after this? How do you put this into a coaching session? And it's it's a good question. So I'll just take a couple of minutes to show you, if that's okay with you. Just a suggestion for how you fit this into a coaching session, since you asked. I presume at some deeper level there must be something that you wanted to work on. Your unconsciousness. Thank you very much, Lisa. So pretend we're having a coaching session and we're talking about whatever it is you want to talk about, and it's it's going fantastically, of course. And we get to a point where there's something that you want, a goal that we're working on, might be a short-term or a long-term goal, but we get to the point where you're starting to feel a bit like, I've been here before, and this is something I've thought about doing a number of times before in my life, and I've never kind of got round to it, and I feel like there's something holding me back. And we can sit here for ages talking about it, and we still don't get any further forward.
Yeah.
What is that thing?
That's procrastinating about writing a book, or not prioritising sufficiently. Other things will take it sideways. So I start it, I put it down, get back to it.
So procrastinating about writing your book, or putting off starting your book and keep starting it and putting it down, and prioritising other things instead of writing your book yourself.
That's the problem,
Prioritising other things. So I'm just going to use this one. And is the problem pointy or smoothie? Pointy. Has the problem's fuse blown?
No.
No. Is the problem colourful or grey? When did you last think about this? Yesterday. When is the problem's sell-by date? September, August. And coming back to your point, when is the problem sell-by date? And she's talking about a book, so we can expect that's going to trigger some. Oh no, it was the lady sitting next to you, wasn't it? It was the lady sitting next to you. There was somebody over there, female, dark hair. That's all I could. That's the only description I could give to the police. Is the problem left or right? Left. And was this a problem a week ago? Yeah?
Wasn't really thinking about it.
You weren't really thinking about it. What Confucius say about this problem? Don't worry, be happy. Is that the title of the book, by the way? No. Where is the problem without you?
On my dining room table.
On your dining room table. One last one. Is the problem ripe yet?
It's just to Mango.
It's just turned into a mango.
Nice.
Is that the title of this? Wouldn't that be a great book title? It's just turned into a mango.
Another book.
Yeah, the sequel. It's just turned into another mango. I could go on all day with that. So those strange questions have given you some different insights, maybe different ways of looking at this. Where do you feel you are now with this?
Feels like it's less of an issue.
Uh-huh.
So there's something about almost kind of giving voice to the problem has given me perspective, given me distance, which is actually kind of given me more options. So I'm starting to think, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and I can do this, and I can do that.
So giving voice to the problem has given you different options, and you're starting to think of different things that you could do.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is the next thing that what do you feel like is the next really simple little step, something practical that you want to do as a result of this conversation?
Make a plan.
Make a plan? Excellent. Sounds like procrastinating to me, but go with that.
Put some dates in my diary so that I actually...
Yeah, because that always works.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Write them in black pen as well. Yeah, big letters, and underline them. Yeah.
Tell everyone about them.
Yeah. Go on.
We're in the option stage here.
Actually, we're in the way forward stage.
What else could I do?
And therefore, what you're attempting to do, coming out of Unsticker world into meta model world now, what you're attempting to do is rerun the program that's preventing you from writing the book.
Yeah.
So you're attempting to do that. The program is based on what will people think when they finally hold this thing in their hands.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a practical piece of advice as an author. Do not write a book. Put that out of your mind. Just write. And at some point in the future, it may or may not become a book if that's what you choose. But for now, just write.
Someone else said that to me a few years ago.
And write as an exercise in clarifying your own thoughts and organising your own thoughts. Write for you first. If it becomes a book later, great. It may do, it may not. There's whole loads of stuff on your computer. Articles you've written, emails you've written, all sorts of things, which will never become books. And when you don't put that extra burden of satisfying other people on yourself, it's not an issue. You can freely express yourself. So it's about self-expression that's been judged by other people, I'm guessing. How do you feel about that? So if we focus on that for a moment, the problem is expressing yourself when there's some material, physical, long-lasting thing that could be judged by other people. What does the problem taste like?
Orange juice.
Orange juice. How have you earned this problem?
Self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage. What will you do? Stop it. What would happen if you didn't? How slow is this problem?
Yeah, it's pretty laid back.
Pretty laid back. What sizes does the problem come in? 14 to 16. I'm thinking you've got a specific person in mind there. How far can the problem fall?
I've got a picture of got a picture of a rather tall fridge.
Uh-huh.
So it would fall back.
A rather tall fridge that it could fall off. Okay, excellent. And so in terms of our coaching process and this goal that you have, where would you say you are now with that?
kind of a sense of relief.
Mhm.
Yeah, they feel a little bit calmer about it, and almost like it's not such a big deal.
So you feel calmer about it and like it's not such a big deal. Okay. And we would then continue our conversation around maybe now might be the time to think about a next step, or just something very simple, practical you could do in the next week that for you would constitute progress. Can you think of something that you just feel, not forcing yourself to, not making a plan, just something you feel like doing in the next week or so?
Something about movement and walking, so maybe going for a walk.
Go for a walk.
A friend or colleague or something, just talking it out.
Okay, so go for a walk with a friend or colleague. I'm just repeating what you're saying so they can hear. So go for a walk with a friend or colleague so you can talk it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And is that something you've done before?
Not in relation to writing.
Not in relation to
I've
writing.
done it in other contexts.
Okay. So in relation to writing, this would be something new.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And that would be a perfect action arising from a coaching discussion. It's something, we don't have to make a plan, it's not some laboured action, it's not some commitment that they've got to make, it's just something they feel like doing. And if they feel like doing it, they're more inclined to do it. And we may, if we put a judgment on that, saying, what you're going to do, or you go for a walk, that's not getting you, but you do 5,000 words by Tuesday, then we're just compounding the pressure. We're becoming, as somebody over there said, the enabler or the facilitator. So we compound the pressure. So what we're looking for is just something very easy, very simple, something you feel like doing. You'll do it. It's something different than you've done before. Something will change as a result. Who knows what? But then that's the purpose of our conversation. Is we don't know. We don't have a fixed endpoint we're going to get to, but we know that the only way is forwards, and we keep doing that. That help you to see how to put it into the context?
Yeah.
So just a little simple tool that when we get stuck, we get it out, or we don't have to get it out. Just ask some weird random questions. Questions that do not presuppose that what they just told you is true. And therefore they have to change the representation in order to think about the question. And then it's that changing of the representation that frees up the thinking or the state or allows other options to come to mind or whatever it is. Happy with that? As a man, thank you very much. Well done. I do have a few more pocket on stickers up here. If anybody wants to grab another one to take to a friend or colleague, you're welcome to do that. Does anybody have any quick questions before we wrap up? We've got about 3 minutes. Excellent timing as always. Anybody got any quick questions before we finish up? Or are you all... Yes,
Just observation and question. So some of the unstuck questions to do with time seem to be the ones that are listed the greatest state change.
let me just repeat that back for everybody. Some of the questions to do, some of the unsticker questions to do with time seem to elicit the greatest state change. And
The question is that deliberate?
is that deliberate? Well, all the questions are deliberate. I didn't think before that they would be the ones that elicited the greatest state change. Because time is we represent space, or we represent time through spatial language. We say, oh, next week's nearly here. It's close. It's, summer holidays are getting close. So we talk about time and space using the same language. And physicists talk about space-time. It's an interchangeable, or it's a complete thing. And so, did I know that the questions about time elicited the greatest state change? I didn't make that connection myself. It's interesting that you do, and therefore maybe time has some interesting significance for you. Just thinking back to our conversation at the Richmond Practice Group the other month. In other words, if you're going to do it, get on with it. So that's it. We are out of time. Again, there's a piece of paper here. If you want to put your name and email address down, you could genuinely win a place on my upcoming Master Prac or Trainer training. It just excludes the Society of NLP certification fee, because that's optional anyway. If you want to do that, that's great. There's some books and there's some stuff you can take away with you. But otherwise, I'd like to say thank you so much for coming along, being a super audience, playing along with some crazy stuff, experimenting as always, as I am. And it's been a real pleasure to work with you. Thank you so much to Julie. Thank you so much to Lisa for taking part in the demos.